Okay, so we're going to continue on page 768. I think I've gotten through most of the emotional stuff that, is going to bring me to tears. I apologize. I needed that break. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to go back to 767, the last sentence. I urged them on, but they made no response. They waited a short while, and then I was told to proceed to Echi in the same province of Segami. I replied that since none of us knew the way, someone would have to guide us there. No one was willing to take the lead, but after we had waited for some time, one soldier finally said, "That's the road you should take." He freaked them out so bad they didn't want any part of this mission anymore. Setting off, we followed the road and around noon reached Echi. When we then proceeded to the residence of Homa Rakuro Seimon, there I ordered sake for the soldiers. When the time came for them to leave, some bowed their heads, joined their palms, and said in a most respectful manner, "We did not realize what kind of a man you are. We hated you because we had been told that you slandered Amida Buddha, the one we worship. But now that we have seen with our own eyes what has happened to you, we understand how worthy a person you are and will discard the nimbutsu that we have practiced for so long." Some of them even took their prayer beads out of their tinder bags and flung them away. Others pledged that they would never again chant the nimbutsu. After they left, Rokuro Seimon's retainers took over the guard. Then Seimonojo and his brothers took their leave. That evening, in the hour of the dog, a messenger from Kamakura arrived with an order from the regent. The soldiers were sure that it would be an official letter to behead me, but Umanojo, Homa's deputy, came running with the letter, knelt and said, "We were afraid that you would be executed tonight, but now the letter has brought wonderful news." The messenger said that since the Lord of Musashi had left for a spy in Atami this morning at the hour of the hare, he set off at once and rode for 4 hours to get here because he feared that something might happen to you. The messenger has left immediately to take the news to the Lord in Atami tonight. The accompanying letter read, "This person is not really guilty. He will shortly be pardoned. If you execute him, you will have cause to regret." Now it was the night of the 13th. There were scores of warriors stationed around my lodging and in the main garden. Because it was the middle of the 9th month, the moon was very round and full. I went out into the garden and there, turning toward the moon, recited the verse portion of the lifespan chapter. Then I spoke briefly about the faults of the various schools, citing passages from the Lotus Sutra. I said, "You, the god of the moon, are rare moon, the son of a god who participated in the ceremony of the Lotus Sutra. When the Buddha expounded the treasure tower chapter, you received his order, and in the entrustment chapter, when the Buddha patted your head with his hand, in your vow you said, 'We will respectfully carry out all these things just as the world-honored one has commanded.' You are that very God. Would you have an opportunity to fulfill the vow you made in the Buddha's presence if it were not for me? Now that you see me in this situation, you should rush forward joyfully to receive the sufferings of the Votary of the Lotus Sutra in his stead, thereby carrying out the Buddha's command and also fulfilling your vow. It is strange indeed that you have not done anything. If nothing is done to set this country to rights, I will never return to Kamakura, even if you do not intend to do anything for me. How can you go on shining with such a complacent face? The Great Collection Sutra says, the sun and moon no longer shed their light. The Benevolent King Sutra says, the sun and moon depart from their regular courses. The Sovereign King Sutra says, the 33 heavenly gods become furious. What about these passages, Moon God? What is your answer?" And Mr. Lee, you can see he read all the sutras. Then, as though in reply, a large star, bright as the morning star, fell from the sky and hung in a branch of a plum tree in front of me. The soldiers, astounded, jumped down from the veranda, fell on their faces in the garden, or ran behind the house. Immediately the sky clouded over and a fierce wind started up, raging so violently that the whole island of Inoshima seemed to roar. The sky shook, echoing with a sound like pounding drums. The day dawned, and on the 14th day, at the hour of the hare, a man called the lay priest Juro came and said to me, "Last night there was a huge commotion in the regent's residence at the hour of the dog. They summoned a diviner who said, 'The country is going to erupt in turmoil because you punished that priest. If you do not call him back to Kamakura immediately, there is no telling what will happen to this land.' At that, some said, 'Let's pardon him.' Others said, 'Since he predicted that war would break out within 100 days, why don't we wait and see what happens?' I was kept at Echi for more than 20 days. During that period, 7 or 8 cases of arson and an endless succession of murders took place in Kamakura. Slanderers went around saying that Nichiren's disciples were setting the fires. The government officials thought this might be true and made up a list of over 260 of my followers who they believed should be expelled from Kamakura. Word spread that these persons were all about to be exiled to remote islands, and that those disciples already in prison would be beheaded. It turned out, however, that the fires were set by the observers of the precepts and Nimbutsu believers in an attempt to implicate my disciples. There were other things that happened, but they are too numerous to mention here." So all kinds of things occurred in order to try and undermine what was going on and keep him from continuing with his teaching. Pardon me. I left Echi on the 10th day of the 10th month, 1271, and arrived in the province of Sado on the 28th day of the same month. On the first day of the 11th month, I was taken to a small hut that stood in a field called Tsukahara behind Homa Rakuro Seimon's residence in Sado. One room with 4 posts. It stood on some land where corpses were abandoned, a place like Rendaino in Kyoto. Not a single statue of the Buddha was enshrined there. The boards of the roof did not meet. The walls were full of holes. The snow fell and piled up, never melting away. I spent my days there sitting in a straw coat or lying on a fur skin. At night it hailed and snowed, and there were continual flashes of lightning. Even in the daytime the sun hardly shone. It was a wretched place to live. I felt like Li Ling, who was imprisoned in a rocky cave in the land of the northern barbarians, and the Tripitaka master Phao Tao, who was branded on the face and exiled to the area south of the Yangtze by Emperor Huizong. Nevertheless, King Suzudan received severe training under the seer Asita to obtain the blessings of the Lotus Sutra. And even though Bodhisattva Never Disparaging was, by the way, King Suzudan, I believe, is a previous life of Shakyamuni, and Asita is actually a Devadatta. King Suzudan received severe training under the seer Asita to obtain the blessings of the Lotus Sutra, and even Bodhisattva Never Disparaging was beaten by the staves of arrogant monks and others. He achieved honor as a votary of the one. Never Disparaging was beaten by the staves of arrogant monks and others. He achieved honor as a votary of the one vehicle. Therefore, nothing is more joyful to me than to have been born in the latter day of the law and to suffer persecutions, because I propagate the 5 characters of Myoho Rengekyo. For more than 2,200 years after the passing of the Buddha, no one, not even the great teacher Tentai Chichi, experienced the truth of the passage in the sutra that says, "If the Lotus Sutra will face much hostility in the world and be difficult to believe." Only I have fulfilled the prophecy from the sutra, and again we will be banished. The Buddha says, in reference to those who listen to one verse or phrase of the Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law, that I will bestow on all of them a prophecy that they will attain supreme perfect enlightenment. Hearing the name and the words of the truth, they'll eventually get to Buddhahood. Thus there can be no doubt that I will teach supreme perfect enlightenment. Thus there can be no doubt that I will reach supreme perfect enlightenment. It is the Lord of Sagami above all who has been a good friend to me. Heino Saman is to me what Devadatta was to Shakyamuni Buddha. The Nimbutsu priests are comparable to the venerable Kokolika, and the observers of the precepts to the monks Sunakshatra. The age of the Buddha is none other than today, and our present age is none other than that of the Buddha. This is what the Lotus Sutra describes as the true aspect of all phenomena and as a consistency from beginning to end. So what did he just say there? Okay, he just said, my enemies are my friends. Those that are trying to do me harm are doing the greatest good because they're allowing me in this specific time period to do the specific things that will assure my enlightenment, my Buddhahood, my attachment to the law for eternity. Again, Heino Saman, which is the guy that tried to cut off his head, right, is to me what Devadatta was to Shakyamuni Buddha. Someone that persecuted him, but someone who, in the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni declares that he was the asita, the seer that taught him in a previous lifetime. And then he says the Nimbutsu priests, which we know are Amida people, are comparable to the venerable Kokolika, who's like a devil guy, right? And the observers of the precepts to the monk, he's making all these comparisons to Shakyamuni's life and his own, and the people that surround him and the people that surrounded Shakyamuni, and saying there ain't no difference, okay, except that wasn't the latter day of the law, and now it is, okay? In the 5th volume of middle of page 770, in the 5th volume of Great Concentration and Insight states, as practice progresses and understanding grows, the 3 obstacles and 4 devils emerge in confusing form, vying with one another to interfere. That's the same thing that happens to all of us. As practice progresses and understanding grows, the Sancho Shima actually emerge and try to throw us off the course that's on its way to attaining Buddhahood in our present form and validating the truth of the teaching we embrace as the disciples of the original teacher. It also states, I will only be like a boar bubbling against the golden mountains, like the rubbing against the golden mountains, like the various rivers flowing into the sea, like logs making a fire burn more briskly, or like the wind swelling the body of the kalakula insect. These passages mean that if one understands and practices the Lotus Sutra, just as it teaches, in accordance with the people's capacity and at the right time, and he puts those 2 caveats in, then these 7 obstacles and devils will confront one. Among them, the devil king of the 6th heaven is the most powerful. He will possess one's sovereign, parents, wife or children, lay supporters, or evil persons, and through them will attempt in a friendly manner to divert one from practice of the Lotus Sutra. I'll say it again because many of you experience this and are faced with this, and it's already described by Nichiren from the very get-go that this will happen because the Sutra says this will happen to the votaries. You're a votary of the Lotus Sutra as a bodhisattva of the earth. You do understand that, right? So it says, these passages mean that if one understands and practices the Lotus Sutra as it teaches, and Nichiren's qualifying, as I do, okay, so it's really being of the same mind as Nichiren. If you practice as the Lotus Sutra teaches, as I've interpreted it for the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in Mappo, okay, in accordance with the people's capacity, because you can't do this in advance of the latter day of the law, okay, and at the right time, because it can only happen in the latter day of the law, then these 7 obstacles and devils will confront one. So he's saying everybody that does this will all experience this, but it's there for us to defeat. Among them, the devil king of the 6th heaven is the most powerful. He will possess one's sovereign authorities, governmental authorities, parents, wife or children, lay supporters or evil persons, and through them will attempt in a friendly manner to divert one from practice of the Lotus Sutra, or will oppose one outright. The practice of Buddhism is always accompanied by persecutions and difficulties corresponding in severity to which sutra one may uphold. To practice the Lotus Sutra will provoke particularly harsh persecutions. To practice as it teaches, because you're going for enlightenment in a single lifetime. How easy should it be? What kind of causes would it make sense you have to make in order to achieve that? To practice as it teaches and in accordance with the time and the people's capacity will incite truly agonizing ordeals that you overcome, that you defeat, that you may wonder why you have to or why they're occurring. Jesus, it's already up. Pardon me, it's not Jesus. Everybody, it's already all laid out, well in advance of us starting our path. But you have to read it and understand what's there. If you don't read the Gosho, you don't know. He's already said all this stuff. President Ikeda, when he's talking to continuous difficulties, yada, 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 he's talking to the teaching of Nichiren, really. Okay? So the 8th volume of the Annotations on Great Concentration and Insight states, that's Myolo, so long as a person does not try to depart from the sufferings of birth and death and aspire to the Buddha vehicle, the devil will watch over him like a parent. He will give him no resistance because he's staying in the darkness of delusion. No threat to the spreading of enlightenment, Buddhahood, that will create Kosarufu, which will be the defeat of the devil. So he's saying again, so long, this is Myolo, all the way back to Myolo saying this. So long as a person does not try to depart from the sufferings of birth and death and aspire to the Buddha vehicle, the devil will watch over him like a parent. This passage means that even though a person may cultivate roots of goodness, so long as he practices Nimbutsu, true words, Zen, precepts, or any teaching other than the Lotus Sutra, he will have the devil king for a parent. The devil king will possess and cause other persons to respect him and give him alms, and people will be deluded into believing that he is truly an enlightened priest. If he is honored by the sovereign, for instance, the people are sure to offer him alms. On the other hand, a priest who incurs the enmity of the rulers and others because of the Lotus Sutra is surely practicing the correct teaching. Devadatta was the foremost good friend to the thus come one Shakyamuni. In this age as well, it is not one's allies, but one's powerful enemies who assist one's progress. All of this is there to make you be the Buddha, help you be the Buddha, reveal to you that you are the Buddha. We find examples before our very eyes. The Hojo clan in Kamakura could not have firmly established itself as the ruler of Japan had it not been for the challenges posed by Yoshimori and the retired emperor of Oki. In this sense, these men were the best allies of the ruling clan could have. For me, Nichiren, my best allies in attaining Buddhahood are Kagenobu, the priest Ryokan, Doryu, and Dora Mirabutsu, and Heino Seimen, and the Lord of Sagami. I am grateful when I think that without them, I could not have proved myself to be the votary of the Lotus Sutra. What a badass. In the yard around the hut, the snow piled deeper and deeper. No one came to see me. My only visitor was the piercing wind. Great consonant insight in the Lotus Sutra lay open before my eyes, and Nam-myoho Renge-kyo flowed from my lips. My evening passed in discourse to the moon and stars on the fallacies of the various schools and the profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra. Thus one year gave way to the next. One finds people of mean spirit wherever one goes. Remember that, everybody. One finds people of mean spirit wherever one goes. The rumor reaching me that the observers of the precepts and the Nimbutsu priests on the island of Sado, including Yui Amida Butsu, Shoyubo, Inshobo, Jidobo, and their followers, several hundred of them, had met to decide what to do about me. Evidently, these were all priests and their followers on Sado Island when he got there. One said, Nichiren, the notorious enemy of Amida Buddha and an evil teacher to all people, has been exiled to our province. As we all know, exiles to this island seldom manage to survive. Even if they do, they never return home. So no one is going to be punished for killing an exile. Nichiren lives all alone at a place called Tsukahara. No matter how strong and powerful he is, if there's no one around, what can he do? Let's go together and shoot him with arrows. Another said, he was supposed to be beheaded, but his execution has been postponed for a while because the wife of the Lotus is about to have a child. The postponement is merely temporary, though I hear he is eventually going to be executed. A third said, let's ask Lord Rokuro Seiman to behead him. If he refuses, we can plan something ourselves. There were many proposals about what to do with me, but the third proposal mentioned above was decided on. Eventually, several hundred people gathered at the constable's office. Rokuro Seiman addressed them, saying, an official letter from the regent directs me that the priest shall not be executed. This is no ordinary contemptible criminal. And if anything happens to him, I, Shigetsura, will be guilty of grave dereliction. Instead of killing him, because we all know he's full of shit, right? Instead of killing him, why don't you confront him in religious debate? He's saying, the constable's saying, that's how we get off him. We'll expose him for not knowing what he's talking about, because all these other priests and their followers are the ones saying, we want to kill him. He's going to die anyhow. Top of page 771, second column. Following the suggestion, the Nembutsu and other priests, accompanied by apprentice priests carrying the 3 Pure Land Sutras, Great Concentration and Insight, the True Word Sutras, and other literature under their arms or hanging from their necks, gathered at Tsukahara on the 16th day of the first month. They came not only from the province of Sado, but also from the provinces of Echigo, Echu, Dewa, Mutsu, and Shinano. Several hundred priests and others gathered in the spacious yard of the hut and in the adjacent field. Rokuro Seiman, his brothers, and his entire clan came, as well as the lay priest farmers, all in great numbers. The Nembutsu priests uttered streams of abuse. The True Word priest turned pale, and the Tendai priest called loudly to vanquish the opponent. The lay believers cried out in hatred, there he is, the notorious enemy of our Amida Buddha. The uproar and jeering resounded like thunder and seemed to shake the earth. I let them clamor for a while and then said, silence, all of you. You are here for a religious debate. This is no time for abuse. At this, Rokuro Seiman and others voiced their accord, and some of them grabbed the abusive Nembutsu followers by the neck and pushed them back. The priests proceeded to cite the doctrines of Great Concentration and Insight and the True Word in Nembutsu and the Nembutsu teachings. I responded to each, establishing the exact meaning of what had been said, then coming back with questions. However, I needed to ask only 1 or 2 at most before they were completely silenced. They were far inferior even to the True Word Zen, Nembutsu, and Tendai priests in Kamakura. So you can imagine how the debate went. I kicked their ass, is what he's saying. I overturned them as easily as a sharp sword cutting through a melon or a gale bending the grass. They not only were poorly versed in the Buddhist teachings, but contradicted themselves. They confused sutras with treatises or commentaries with treatises. I discredited the Nembutsu by telling how Shantao fell out of the willow tree and refuted the story about the great teacher Kobo's 3-pronged diamond pounder and of how he transformed himself into the thus come one Behaviorachana. As I demonstrated each falsity and aberration, some of the priests swore, some were struck dumb, while others turned pale. There were Nimbutsu adherents who admitted the error of their school. Some threw away their robes and beads on the spot and pledged never to chant the Nimbutsu again. The members of the group all began to leave, as did Rokuro Seiman and his men. As they were walking across the yard, I called the Lord back to make a prophecy. I first asked him when he was departing for Kamakura, and he answered that it would be around the 7th month after his farmers had finished their work in the fields. Then I said, for a warrior, this is cool because he's going to foresee another thing. I said, for a warrior, work in the fields means assisting his lord in times of peril and receiving fiefs in recognition of his service. Fighting is about to break out in Kamakura, that Daishonin tells this constable on Sado Island. Fighting is about to break out in Kamakura. You should hasten there to distinguish yourself in battle, and then you will be rewarded with fiefs. Since your warriors are renowned throughout the province of Sagami, if you remain here in the countryside tending to your farms and arrive too late for the battle, your name will be disgraced. I do not know I do not know what he thought of this, but Homa, dumbfounded, did not utter a word. The Nimbutsu priests and the observers of the precepts and lay believers looked bewildered, not comprehending what I had said. After everyone had gone, I began to put into shape a work in 2 volumes called The Opening of the Eyes, which I had been working on since the 11th month of the previous year. I wanted to record the wonder of Nichiren in case I should be beheaded. The essential message of this work is that the destiny of Japan depends solely upon Nichiren. A house without a pillar collapses and a person without a soul is dead. Nichiren is the soul of the people of this country. And don't forget, there is no translation of what he just said, so they use the word soul. I read that to you. Again, soul, don't think of like Western concept of soul, a continuing existence as a particular personality. A house without pillars collapses, and a person without a soul is dead. Nichiren is the soul of the people of this country. Heino Seiman has already toppled the pillar of Japan, and the country grows turbulent as unfounded rumors and speculation rise up like phantoms to cause dissension in the ruling clan. Further, Japan is about to be attacked by a foreign country, as I described in my On Establishing the Correct Teaching. Having written to this effect, I entrusted the manuscript to Nakatsukasa Saburo Seiman, to his messenger, to Shijo Kingo's messenger. The disciples around me thought what I had written was too provocative, but they could not stop me. Just then, a ship arrived at the island on the 18th day of the 2nd month. It carried the news that fighting had broken out in Kamakura and then in Kyoto, causing indescribable suffering. Rokuro Seiman, leading his men, left on fast ships that night for Kamakura. Before departing, he humbly begged for my assistance with palms joined. He said, I have been doubting the truth of the words you spoke on the 16th day of last month, but they have come true in less than 30 days. I see now that the Mongols will surely attack us, and it is equally certain that believers in Nimbutsu are doomed to the hell of incessant suffering. I will never chant the Nimbutsu again. So he completely converted the head guy on the island. To this I replied, whatever I may say, unless the Lord of Sagami heeds my words, the people of Japan will not heed them either. And in that case, our country will surely be ruined. Although I myself may be insignificant, I propagate the Lotus Sutra, and therefore I am an envoy of Shakyamuni Buddha. The sun goddess and great bodhisattva Hachiman, who are insignificant, are treated with great respect in this country, but they are only petty gods when compared to Brahma, Chakra, the gods of the sun and the moon, and the 4 heavenly kings. It is said, however, that to kill someone who serves these 2 gods is equal to the sin of killing 7.5 ordinary persons. The Grand Minister of State and lay priests and the retired Emperor of Oki perished because they did so. Thus, persecuting me is incomparably worse than molesting the servants of those 2 gods, as I am the envoy of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, the sun goddess and great the sun goddess and great bodhisattva Hachiman should bow their heads before me, press their palms together, and prostrate themselves. The votary of the Lotus Sutra is attended by Brahma and Chakra on either side, and the gods of the sun and the moon. Light his path before and behind. Even if my counsel is heeded, if I am not given due respect as the votary of the Lotus Sutra, then the country will perish. How ominous that the authorities have turned hundreds of persons against me and have even banished me twice. This country is surely doomed. But since I have asked the gods to withhold their punishment on our land, it has survived until now. However, that punishment has finally descended because these unreasonable actions continued. And if my counsel is not heeded on this occasion, the gods will cause the Mongol Empire to send its force to destroy Japan. That would seem to be the kind of disaster that Heino-Saemon is intent upon calling forth. When it happens, I doubt that you and your followers can find safety even on this island. After Sado. After I had finished speaking, Homa looking deeply perplexed. After I had finished speaking, Homa, the head guy here, looked deeply perplexed, set off on his way. At the bottom of page 773, the lay believers, hearing of this, said to one another, perhaps this priest has some kind of transcendental powers. How terrifying. From now on, we had better cease giving any alms or support to the Nembutsu priests and other observers of the precepts. The observers of the precepts who were followers of Ryokan and the Nembutsu priest said, since this priest predicted the outbreak of the rebellion in our country, perhaps he is one of the conspirators. After this, things grew somewhat quieter. Continuing on page 773. Middle of the page, second column. Then the Nembutsu priests gathered again in council. If things go on this way, they said, we will die of starvation because nobody's giving them alms anymore. By all means, let's rid ourselves of this priest. Already more than half the people in the province have gone over to his side. What are we to do? Yuiamida Butsu, the leader of the Nembutsu priests, along with Dokan, a disciple of Ryokan, and Shoyubo, who were leaders of the observers of the precepts, journeyed in haste to Kamakura. There they reported to the lord of the province of Musashi, if this priest remains on the island of Sado, there will soon be not a single Buddhist hall left standing or a single priest remaining. He takes the shrines of Amida Buddha and throws them in the fire or casts them into the river. Day and night he climbs the high mountains, bellows to the sun and moon, and curses the region. The sound of his voice can be heard throughout the entire province, chanting Daimoku, I'm sure. When the former governor of Musashi heard this, he decided there was no need to report it to the regent. Instead, he sent private orders that any followers of Nichiren in the province of Sado should be driven out of the province or imprisoned. He also sent official letters containing similar instructions. He was talking about everybody's chanting Daimoku is what he was talking about. He also sent official letters containing similar instructions. He did so 3 times. I will not attempt to describe what happened during this period. You can probably imagine. Some people were thrown into prison because they were said to have walked past my hut. Others were exiled because they were reported to have given me donations, or their wives and children were taken into custody. The former governor of Musashi then reported The former governor of Musashi then reported what he had done to the regent, but quite contrary to his expectations, the regent issued a letter of pardon on the 14th day of the 2nd month in the 11th year of Bunei, which reached Sado on the 8th day of the 3rd month. The Nembutsu priests held another council. This man, the arch enemy of the Buddha Amida and slanderer of the Reverend Shantao and the Honorable Honen, has incurred the wrath of the authorities and happened to be banished to this island. How can we bear to see him pardoned and allowed to return home alive? While they were engaged in various plots, for some reason there was an unexpected change in the weather. A favorable wind began to blow, and I was able to leave the island. The strait can be crossed in 3 days with a favorable wind, but not even in 50 or 100 days when the weather is bad. I crossed over in no time at all. So he's gotten off of Sado Island. He's back on the mainland of Japan. Thereupon, the main island. Thereupon, the Nimbutsu priests, observers of the precepts and true word priests of the provincial capital of Echigo and Zenkoji temple in Shinano gathered from all directions to hold a meeting. What a shame that the Sado priests, this is in quotations, he's saying this is what they were all saying. What a shame the Sado priests should have allowed Nichiren to return alive. Whatever we do, we must not let this priest make his way past the living body of the Buddha Amida. But in spite of their machinations, a number of warriors from the provincial government office in Echigo were dispatched to escort me. So the government's saying, don't mess with him. Everybody that's of the other schools is trying to kill him. Might be why he went to Minobu. Were dispatched to escort me. Thus I was able to pass safely by Zenkoji. The Nimbutsu priests were powerless to stop me. I left the island of Sado on the 13th day of the 3rd month and arrived in Kamakura on the 26th day of the same month. On the 8th day of the 4th month, I met with Heino Seimen. In contrast to his behavior in previous occasions, his manner was quite mild, and he treated me with courtesy. An accompanying lay priest asked me about the Nimbutsu. A layman asked me about the True Word School, and another person asked about Zen, while Heino Seimen himself inquired whether it was possible to attain the way through any of the sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra. I replied to each of these questions by citing passages from the sutras. Mr. Lee. Then Heino Seimen, apparently acting on behalf of the regent, asked when the Mongol forces would invade Japan. I replied, they will surely come within this year. I have already expressed my opinion on this matter, but it has not been heeded. If you try to treat someone's illness without knowing its cause, you will only make the person sicker than before. In the same way, if the true word priests are permitted to try to overcome the Mongols with their prayers and imprecations, they will only bring about the country's military defeat. Under no circumstances whatever should the true word priests or the priests of any other schools for that matter be allowed to offer up prayers. If each of you has a real understanding of Buddhism, you will understand this matter on hearing me explain it to you. Also, I notice that although advice from others is heeded, when I offer advice, it is for some strange reason invariably ignored. Nevertheless, I would like to state certain facts here so that you may think them over later. The retired emperor of Oki was the sovereign of the nation, and the acting administrator, Hojo Yoshitoki, was his subject, and yet the latter attacked and defeated the retired emperor. Why would the sun goddess permit a subject to attack a sovereign who should be like a father to him? Why would great Bodhisattva Hachiman allow a vassal to attack the Lord with impunity? And yet, as we know, the sovereign and the courtiers supporting him were defeated by Hojo Yoshitoki. That defeat was no mere accident. It came about because they put their faith in the misleading teachings of the great teacher Kobo and the biased views of the great teachers Jikaku and Chisho, and became the priests of Mount Heii. In other words, they're the ones that turned Dingyo's Tendai school into all true word followers, and became the priests of Mount Heii, Toji and Onoji. Onoji was the true word or Nimbutsu, one of the two, also on the same mountain. Let me say that defeat was no mere accident. It came about because they put their faith in the misleading teachings of the great teacher Kobo and the biased views of great teachers Jikaku and Chisho, and because the priests of Mount Heii, Toji, and Onoji, in their opposition to the Kamakura shogunate, offered prayers for its defeat. Thus their curses rebound upon the originator, and as a consequence, the sovereign and his courtiers were forced to suffer defeat. The military leaders in Kamakura knew nothing of such rituals, so no prayers to subdue the enemy were offered. Thus they were able to win. But if they now depend on such prayers, they will meet the same fate as the courtiers. Okay, and so real quick before I go on page 775, he's talking about, thus their curses rebounded upon the originators, and it'll give you a point of reference of 24. And what does that say? That's talking about the fact that you can't pray to hurt other people without it coming back to you. It was changed, pardon me. I messed up here, pardon me. What page was I on? Do you remember? I got it. The Enzo, part middle of page 775, first column. The Enzo people of northern Japan have no understanding of the principles of birth and death. Ando Goro was a pious man who knew the law of cause and effect and erected many Buddhist halls and pagodas. How could it happen then that the Enzo beheaded him? In the view of these events, I have no doubt that if these priests are allowed to go on offering prayers for victory, your lordship will meet with some untoward event. And when that happens, you must not under any circumstance say that I failed to warn you. Such was the stern manner in which I addressed him. He's talking to Heino Seiman again. When I returned, I heard that the Dharma seal of the Amida Hall had been asked to pray for rain from the 10th day of the 4th month. This Dharma seal is the most learned priest of the Toji and the teacher of the prelate of Omuro. He has mastered the true word esoteric teachings of the great teachers Kobo, Jikaku, and Chisho, and has memorized all of the doctrines of the various schools, such as Tendai and Flower Garland. I was right. It was the people that turned Dingyos into true word. He began praying for rain on the 10th day. On the 11th, a heavy rain fell. There was no wind, but only a gentle rain that fell for a day and night. The regent, the Lord of Sagami, was said to have been so deeply impressed that he presented the Dharma seal with 30 ryo of gold, a horse, and other gifts as a reward. When the people of Kamakura heard this, eminent and humble alike clapped their hands, pursed their lips, and laughed with derision, saying, "That Nichiren preached a false kind of Buddhism and came near to getting his head cut off. He was finally pardoned, but instead of learning his lesson, he goes on slandering the Nembutsu and Zen schools and even dares to speak ill of those of the esoteric teachings of true word. How fortunate that we have this rain to serve as proof of the power of the true word prayers." Faced with such criticisms, my disciples became quite downcast and complained that I had been too provocative in my attacks on the True Word School. But I said to them, just wait a while. If the evil teachings of the great teacher Kobo could be correct and in fact produce effective prayers for the welfare of the nation, then the retired emperor of Oki would surely have been victorious in his struggle with the Kamakura shogunate, and Sentaku, the favorite boy attendant of the prelate of Amuro, would not have had his head cut off. Kobo, in his treatise on the 10 stages of the mind, states that the Lotus Sutra is inferior to the Flower Garland Sutra. In his precious key to the secret treasury, he claims that the Shakyamuni Buddha of the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra is an ordinary person, and in his comparison of exoteric and esoteric Buddhism, he calls the great teacher Tentai a thief. Moreover, Shokakubo, in his rules of rites for revering the Buddha's relics, states that the Buddha who preached the one vehicle of the Lotus Sutra is not even worthy to tend the sandals of a true word master. The Dharma seal of the Amida Hall is a follower of the men who taught these perverse doctrines. If such a man could show himself superior to me, then the dragon kings who send down the rain must be enemies of the Lotus Sutra, and they will surely be chastised by the gods Brahma and Shakra and the four heavenly kings. There must be more to this than meets the eye. So in between what had been going on, somebody else prayed for rain and it rained, and so they're going, great, Nichiren was wrong. Okay, and Nichiren's saying, all I've been trying to do is I'm worried about the fact that the Mongols are going to invade. I'm not worried about getting rain on your crops, okay? I'm trying to use that as an example of the power of my prayer based on the correct understanding of the Lotus Sutra, okay? So now he's telling his followers, don't be bummed out because somebody got some rain. It's not about the rain, it's about being prepared for the Mongol invasion, okay? So page 776, and this only goes to 7, so we're just about done. He says, okay. There must be more than this than meets the eye. What do you mean by more than meets the eye? My disciples asked with a scornful smile. I replied, Shanwue and Pukun both caused rain to fall in answer to their prayers, but it is recorded that they also brought about high winds. When Kobo prayed for rain, it fell after 21 days had passed, but under such circumstances, it is the same as though he had not caused it to rain at all, since some rain is naturally bound to fall in the course of a 21-day interval. The fact that it happened to rain while he was praying for it is in no way remarkable. What is really impressive is to cause it to fall, though a single ceremony. What is really impressive is to cause it to fall through a single ceremony, the way Tentai and Shinkan did. That is why I say there must be something peculiar about this rain. I had not even finished speaking when a great gale began to blow. Houses of every size, Buddhist halls and pagodas, old trees and government buildings were all swept up into the air or toppled to the ground. A huge shining object flew through the sky, and the earth was strewn with beams and rafters. Men and women were blown to their deaths, and many cattle and horses were struck down. One might have excused such an evil wind if it had come in autumn, the typhoon season, but this was only the 4th month, the beginning of summer. Moreover, this wind did not blow throughout the country, but struck only the 8 provinces of the Kanto region, and in fact only the 2 provinces of the Musashi and Sagami. It blew strongest in Sagami, and within Sagami it blew strongest in Kamakura, and within Kamakura it blew strongest at the government headquarters, Wakamiya, and the temples of Kinchoji and Gorakuji. It was apparent that it was no ordinary wind, but rather the result of the Dharma seal's prayers alone. The people who had earlier pursed their lips and laughed at me suddenly turned sober, and my disciples too were astonished and expressed their wonder. I had been determined all along that, if after 3 attempts to warn the rulers of the nation my advice still went unheeded, I would leave the country. With that thought in mind, I accordingly left Kamakura on the 12th day of the 5th month and came here to Mount Minobu. In the 10th month of the same year, 1274, the Mongols launched their attack just as I predicted. Not only were the islands of Iki and Tsushima assaulted and captured, but the forces of Dazaifu government office in Kyushu were defeated as well. When the military leaders, the lay priest Shoni and Otomo, received word of this, they fled, and the remaining warriors were struck down without difficulty, though the Mongol forces withdrew. It is apparent just how weak Japan's defenses would be if they should launch another attack in the future. The benevolent King Sutra says, once the sages have departed, then the 7 disasters are certain to arise. The sovereign King Sutra states, because evil people are respected and favored and good people are subjected to punishment, marauders will appear from other regions and the people of the country will meet with death and disorder. If these pronouncements of the Buddha are true, then evil men certainly exist in our country, and the ruler favors and respects such men while treating good men with enmity. The Great Collection Sutra states, The sun and moon no longer shed their light. All 4 directions will be afflicted by drought. The wicked rulers and monks who perform these 10 evil acts will curse and destroy my correct teaching. In the Benevolent King Sutra we read, evil monks, hoping to gain fame and profit, in many cases appear before the ruler, the crown prince, or other princes, and take it upon themselves to preach doctrines that lead to the violation of the Buddhist law and the destruction of the nation. The ruler the ruler, failing to perceive the truth of the situation, listens to and puts faith in such doctrines. In this way, he brings about the destruction of Buddhism and of the nation. And the Lotus Sutra speaks of the evil monks of that muddied age. If these passages in the sutra are true, then there must unquestionably be evil monks in this country. The crooked trees are destined to be cut down on a treasure mountain, and dead bodies are rejected by the great sea. Though the great sea of the Buddhist law and though the great sea of the Buddhist law and the treasure mountain of the one vehicle may admit the shards and rubble of the 5 cardinal sins, or though the great sea of the Buddhist law and the treasure mountain of the one vehicle may admit the shards and rubble of the 5 cardinal sins, or the dirty water of the 4 major offenses, they have no room for the dead bodies of those who slander the law, or for the crooked trees, who are ichkantikas, persons of incorrigible disbelief. Therefore, those who endeavor to practice the Buddhist law and who care about what happens to them in future lives, so here we go, here's his advice to us. Therefore, those who endeavor to practice the Buddhist law and who care about what happens to them in future lives should know what a fearful thing it is to slander the Lotus Sutra. Many people wonder why anyone should pay heed to a person like myself who speaks ill of Kobo, Jikaku, and others of their group. I do not know about other religions, but I know that the people everywhere in the province of Awa have good reason to believe what I say. They have seen the proof. They have seen the proof right before their eyes. Indanbo of Inamori, Saigyo-bo, and Dogibyo of Kiyosumi, and Jichibo of Katsumi were all eminent priests, but one should inquire about what kind of deaths they met with. However, I will say no more of them. Ichibo spent 3 years in the great hall of Seichoji, copying the text of the Lotus Sutra in a laborious fashion, bowing 3 times as he copied each character. He had memorized all 10 volumes, and every day and night recited the entire sutra twice for a period of 50 years. Everyone said he would surely become a Buddha, but I alone said that he, along with Dogibo, was even more certain to fall into the depths of hell of incessant suffering than were the Nembutsu priests. You would do well to inquire carefully just how these men met death. If it had not been for me, people would have believed that these priests had attained Buddhahood. You should realize that this is, okay, and so these are people that were of the Tendai school that turned away from the Lotus Sutra and embraced true word. That's what he's really talking about. You would do, and he's saying that even though these people were, this guy was so pious and did all this reciting the Lotus Sutra and copied all 10 volumes and bowed 3 times as he transcribed each character, whatever, all that stuff, it was not based, it was based on a true word perception. So he says, if it had not been for me, people would have believed that these people had attained Buddha. They wouldn't have known the true teaching, that those were not correct circumstances. Yet you should realize from this that the manner of the death of Kobo, Jikaku, and the others indicated that is a truly miserable fate Yet you should realize from this that the manner of the death of Kobo, Jikaku, and the others indicated that a truly miserable fate was in store for them. But their disciples contrived to keep the matter secret so that even the members of the imperial court never learned of it. Hence these men have been looked up to with increasing reverence in later times. And if there had been no one like me to reveal the truth, they would have gone on to being honored in that manner for endless ages to come. The non-Buddhist teacher Oluka turned to stone at his death, but 800 years later his errors were brought to light and the stone melted and turned to water. And in the case of another non-Buddhist teacher, Kapila, 1,000 years passed before his faults were brought to light. People are able to be born in human form because they have observed the 5 precepts in a previous existence. But if they continue to observe the 5 precepts in this life, then the 25 benevolent deities will protect them. And if they continue to observe the 5 precepts in this life, then the 25 benevolent deities will protect them. And same birth and same name, the 2 heavenly messengers who have been with them, each of them, since birth on their shoulders, will guard them. And I will explain that some other time, same birth and same name. So long as they commit no fault, and the demons will have no choice but to do them no harm. And yet in this country of Japan, there are countless people who cry out in misery. We know too that the people on the islands of Iki and Tsushima had to suffer at the hands of the Mongols, and what befell the defenders of the Dazaifu in Kyushu. What fault were the people of this country guilty of, that they should meet with such a fate? One should surely like to know the answer. So he's saying all these people have had all this terrible stuff. They were all practitioners of teachings that are now, it's latter day, they're slanderers actually. He's saying 1 or 2 of the persons there may have been guilty of evil, but is it possible that all of them could have been, to the point that they were slaughtered or persecuted in the way they were without overcoming those persecutions, meeting death as a result? The blame lies entirely in the fact that this country is filled with the disciples of those who despise the Lotus Sutra. True word priests who follow the doctrines handed down from Kobo, Chikaku, and Chisho, Nimbutsu priests who are the latter-day disciples of Shantao and Honen, and the followers of Bodhidharma, Zen, and the other patriarchs of the Zen school. That is why Brahma, Shakra, and the 4 heavenly kings and the other deities, true to their vows, the vows that they took when the Lotus Sutra was expounded, to split into 7 pieces the head of anyone who troubled the practitioner of the sutra, have sent down this punishment. Some people may be perplexed at this point and object that although those who do harm to the votary of the Lotus Sutra are supposed to have their heads split into 7 pieces, there are people who slander the priest Nichiren and yet do not have broken heads. Are we to conclude they may ask that the priest Nichiren is not a true votary of the Lotus Sutra? I would reply by saying that if Nichiren is not a votary of the Lotus Sutra, then who is he? I would reply by saying that if Nichiren is, by the way, Heino Seimin, who hasn't died yet, definitely died a terrible death. I would reply by saying that if Nichiren is not a votary of the Lotus Sutra, then who is? If Honen, a votary who is in his writing ordered people to throw the Lotus Sutra away, is the great teacher Kobo a votary who said that Shakyamuni Buddha will still be in the region of darkness? Or our Shanmue and Jikaku votaries who taught that although the Lotus Sutra and the Mahavajrana Sutra are equal in terms of principle, the latter is superior in practice. Again, this matter of the head being split into 7 pieces, one need not imagine the kind of split made by a sharp sword. We should understand this because that pronouncement is made on the Gohonzon, may those who vex and trouble the practitioner of the law have their heads split in 7 pieces. We're not talking about necessarily taking a knife or something and cutting their head into 7 pieces. He's clarifying that. Again, this matter of the head being split into 7 pieces, one should not imagine the kind of split made by a sharp sword. On the contrary, the Lotus Sutra says that the split is like that of the branches of the Arjaka tree. If a person's head there, if in a person's head there are 7 drops of liquid, and outside there are 7 demons. If the demons drink 1 drop, the person's head will begin to ache. If they drink 3 drops, his life will be in danger, and if they drink all 7 drops, he will die. People in the world today all have heads that have split apart like the branches of the arjaka tree, but they are so steeped in evil karma that they are not even aware of the fact. They are like persons who have been injured while they were asleep or in a state of drunkenness and have not yet become conscious of their injury. Rather than saying the head is split into 7 pieces, we sometimes say that the mind is split into 7 pieces. The skull bone under the scalp cracks or even breaks apart at the time of death. Many people of our own period have had their heads split open in the great earthquake of the Shoka era, or at the time of the appearance of a great comet in the Brunei era. At that time, their heads split open. They had severe coughing. They had a severe coughing condition, and when their 5 solid internal organs failed to function correctly, they suffered from dysentery. How could they have failed to realize that they were being punished because they slandered the Votary of Lotus Sutra? Because venison is tasty, the deer is hunted and killed. Because oil can be obtained from the turtle loses its life. If a woman is beautiful, there will be many who envy her. The ruler of a nation has much to fear from other nations, and the life of a man with great wealth is constantly in danger. One who abides by the Lotus Sutra will inevitably attain Buddhahood. Let me say that again. One who abides by the Lotus Sutra will inevitably attain Buddhahood. Therefore, the devil king of the 6th heaven, the Lord of this threefold world, will become intensely jealous of anyone who abides by this sutra. The devil king, we are told, attaches himself like a plague demon to people in a way that cannot be detected by the eye. Thereafter, like persons who gradually become drunk on fine old wine, rulers, fathers and mothers, wives and children, gradually become possessed by him and are filled with jealousy toward the votary of the Lotus Sutra. And that is precisely the situation we face today in the world around us. Because I chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, I have for over 20 years been driven from place to place. Twice I have incurred the wrath of the authorities, and in the end I have retired to this mountain. Here I am surrounded by 4 mountains, Shichimin to the west, Tenshi to the east, and Minobu to the north, and Takatori to the south. Each is high enough to touch the sky and so steep that even flying birds have trouble crossing them. In their midst are 4 rivers called Fuji, Haya, Oshira, and Minobu. In the middle, in a ravine some 100 yards or so across, I have built my hut. I cannot see the sun in the daytime or the moon at night. In the winter there is deep snow, and in summer the grass grows thick. Because so few people come to see me, the trail is very hard to travel. This year especially, the snow is so deep that I have no visitors at all. Knowing that my life may end at any time, I put all my trust in the Lotus Sutra and write things like this so that you know the real story. In these circumstances, your letter was particularly welcome. It seemed almost like a message from Shakyamuni Buddha or from my departed parents, and I cannot tell you how grateful I was. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Thank you very much.